He said he pulled the goggles off and looked with his naked eyes. Nothing. He put the thermals back on. The man was still there. I did it 3 or 4 times, Charlie said. Thermal goggles, a clear man, normal eyes, nothing. It was impossible. Then, he said, it got worse. During the Afghan war, a US soldier stumbled upon something far older and far darker than any enemy he'd faced before. Welcome to the undeniable fear, new real experience tonight. I want to share a story that has been weighing on my mind. It is more than a war story. It is a warning. It is a message from a man who has been running from his past for many years. He has tried to forget, but the memories will not let him go. He asked me to keep his identity a secret. So for this story, we will call him Michael. I received his long, detailed message a few months ago. Reading it felt like opening a heavy door into a cold, dark room. A sense of dread filled me. This feeling was not from reading about normal combat or violence. It was from understanding that what he described was not human. It was not something you could fight with a gun or a grenade. This is not a story about a battle against enemy soldiers. It is a story about something much older, something unseen, something that hides in the shadows of ancient places. It is about a force that is terrifyingly real and hungry. According to Michael, these events happened at a remote mountain outpost in Afghanistan. The place was called Viper's Nest. It was so high up and so isolated that it felt like another world. The normal rules of reality seemed thin there, like a frayed rope about to snap. Michael is a practical man. He is calm and logical. He was trained as an engineer before joining the army. He believes in things he can see, touch, and measure. He's not the type to believe in ghosts or superstitions, but what he and his team experienced during their duty shattered his understanding of the world. It broke his mind in a way that combat never could. He is retired from the army now, but the memories are still sharp and clear. They are carved into his mind. This story is not just a wild rumor he made up. Other soldiers who served in that same mountain region have told similar stories. You can find pieces of this story on the internet, on forums where veterans talk. A version of it was even featured on a major television network in a segment about military mysteries. But Michael says they never got the full horror of it. They never understood the true nature of the thing that lives on that mountain. His entire squad of 6 men saw these things. They all experienced the same terror. They all agreed that something profoundly unnatural happened on that mountain peak. It is as if the mountain itself is a living thing, filled with an old, intelligent, and angry energy. It is a place where the line between the living and the dead has been worn away. So, let me tell you the story. Just as Michael told it to me, I will try to make you feel the cold fear that they felt every single day and night. My name is Michael. I was a sergeant in the United States Army. My unit was a small 6-man team. We were tight. We trusted each other. There was me, Charlie, Rodriguez, Davis, Miller, and Chris. We had been through a lot together. We thought we had seen everything war could throw at us. We were wrong. Our new orders were simple on paper. We were to relieve a British squad holding a critical observation post. The post was officially designated OP-77, but everyone called it Viper's Nest. The name alone should have been our first warning. The briefing officer told us it was the highest point in the entire region, a jagged tooth of rock sticking high into the sky. On the map, it was a perfect strategic gem. Whoever controlled Viper's Nest could see every valley, every trail, every village for 50 miles. It was the ultimate high ground. But we soon learned that some ground is high for a reason. Some places are not meant to be occupied. The journey there was our first taste of the isolation. We flew in on a Chinook helicopter. The ride was loud and tense. When we finally arrived, the helicopter hovered just long enough for us to jump out with our heavy packs. Then it peeled away, its loud rotors fading quickly into the distance. The silence that rushed in to replace the noise was absolute, and it was heavy. It was not a peaceful quiet. It was a watchful, waiting silence. It felt like the mountain was holding its breath, sizing us up. The British soldiers we were replacing were a sorry sight. There were 6 of them, just like us. But they looked like they had been through a meat grinder. Their uniforms were dirty, their eyes were sunken and hollow. They would not look at us directly. Their movements were twitchy and nervous. They packed their gear with a frantic, desperate energy. They were not just war-weary. They were terrified. They were spooked down to their bones. Their sergeant was a tough-looking man with a weathered face. He gave us the standard handover. He pointed out the machine gun positions, the radio equipment, the supply cache, but his mind was not on it. As his men loaded onto the replacement helicopter, he pulled me aside. He gripped my arm tightly. His hand was shaking. "Listen to me, mate," he said, his voice a low, dry rasp. "I need to tell you something about this place. This is not a normal post." I nodded, thinking he was just sharing tactical advice. "This place, it has a mind of its own," he continued. "It does not like to be watched. It watches back. So, a word of advice. If you drop anything out here, a pen, a coin, a photograph of your girlfriend, you consider it gone. Do not waste your time looking for it. It belongs to the mountain now." I started to dismiss it as superstition, but he cut me off. "And that is not all," he said, his eyes wide. "If you dig, if you find things buried here, and I promise you, you will find things, you must not keep them. Do not pocket them as souvenirs. You bury them again. You put them right back in the earth where you found them. You pretend you never saw them. This ground is not just dirt and rock. It is a memory, and it is a hungry memory. Do you understand me?" I told him I did, just to end the conversation. I did not understand at all. I thought the stress had finally gotten to him. We also inherited their military working dog. His name was Rex. He was a big, powerful German shepherd. His file said he was one of the best, a supremely trained animal, fearless and focused. But the dog we saw was a shadow of that description. Rex was nervous. His tail was tucked between his legs. His ears were constantly swiveling, tracking sounds we could not hear. He would stare for hours at a blank rock face or an empty patch of trees, a low, continuous growl rumbling deep in his chest. He was not afraid of us. He was afraid of something else, something that was already here. The outpost itself was a bleak and forbidding place. It was a small sandbagged hut perched on the very highest rock. It looked like it was clinging on for dear life. The only way up was a narrow, rickety wooden ladder that groaned and swayed with every step. Below the hut, there was a shallow, rocky depression where we could set up our cots. It offered little shelter from the wind, and the wind never stopped. It howled and whistled day and night, but it did not sound like normal wind. Sometimes it sounded like it was carrying voices, not clear words, but feelings, whispers of sadness, of pain, and sometimes of a cold, ancient fury. Our job was simple: maintain a 24-hour watch from the hut. We set up a rotation. One man would stay up in the hut with Rex for a few hours, watching the valleys below through night vision and thermal scopes. The other 5 would try to sleep in the cramped hollow, pillow sleep was hard to find on that mountain. The first night, it was Charlie's turn on watch. Charlie was our rock. He was the oldest in the team, steady and reliable. He had a wife and 2 kids back home. He was not a man who scared easily. He climbed up that ladder with Rex, and for the first few hours, everything was quiet. Then, around 1 in the morning, the silence was shattered by the sound of gunfire. It was not a single shot. It was Charlie's M4 rifle on full auto, a long, panicked burst that echoed across the mountains. We scrambled out of our cots, our hearts pounding. We grabbed our rifles and climbed the ladder as fast as we could, expecting to find a firefight. What we found was worse. Charlie was backed into a corner of the hut. His face was a mask of pure terror. He was pale and sweating, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold his rifle. He was hyperventilating. Rex was in an absolute frenzy. The dog was barking and snarling, pulling so hard against his chain that the metal links were cutting into his neck. Drawing tiny drops of blood, he was focused entirely on a point just beyond the perimeter wire, his teeth bared at the empty darkness. What happened? I yelled over the barking. He was right there, Charlie choked out, pointing a trembling finger into the night. I saw him in the thermals. We immediately scanned the area. All of us. We used our night vision scopes. We used our thermal imaging goggles. We used laser pointers. We saw nothing. The forest was cold, dark, and completely empty. There was no heat signature, no body, no disturbed leaves, nothing. But Charlie was insistent, his voice cracking with fear. I was doing my rounds, he said, trying to calm his breathing. I was using my night vision. It was all clear, just green and black. Then I switched to my thermal goggles. The world turned blue and black, and then I saw him. A man, a human figure, but burning bright red and white. He was just standing there between 2 trees, and he was staring right at me. I could feel it, a pressure. He said he pulled the goggles off and looked with his naked eyes. Nothing. He put the thermals back on. The man was still there. I did it 3 or 4 times, Charlie said. Thermal goggles, a clear man, normal eyes, nothing. It was impossible. Then, he said, it got worse. He moved, Charlie whispered, but he did not walk. 1 second he was 50 yards away at the tree line. I blinked and he was right there, 10 feet from the wire. He covered all that distance in less than a second. He just appeared. And his face, it was wrong. It was stretched and smooth, like something was wearing a man's skin but did not know how to make it fit right. We tried to calm him down. We told him it was a trick of the light, maybe a wolf, maybe his mind was playing games from fatigue. We said all the logical things, but in our hearts, we knew better. We all saw the state of Rex. That dog was not fooled by tricks of the light. He was facing a real threat, an enemy his senses could perceive, but our technology could not. We stayed on high alert for the rest of the night, and we all heard things. It was not just our imagination. We all heard the soft scuffling of pebbles. We heard the rustle of bushes when there was no wind. Most clearly, we all heard the sound of footsteps, not walking, but pacing, circling our position just outside the ring of our lights. And once, we all heard a clear, sharp tap, tap, tap on the sandbags of the hut, like someone was politely knocking. The next night, it was my turn for watch. Climbing that shaky ladder felt like walking the plank. My stomach was a knot of dread. Rex whined softly as I settled into the hut. He pressed his body against my leg, seeking comfort I could not give. The first few hours were tense but quiet. I stared into the darkness until my eyes hurt. Then, the radio crackled to life. This was not a normal radio. It was a secure, encrypted, military model. It was only supposed to pick up transmissions from our base. But the voice that came through the static was not from our base. It was a man's voice, deep and guttural. He was speaking in Russian. I do not speak Russian, but I know the sound of it. The voice was panicked, desperate. "Zdes кто-нибудь?" It said, "Is anyone there?" Then the static surged, and the voice returned more frantic. "Oni idut, oni visteni." They are coming. They are in the walls. A cold chill shot down my spine. The Soviets had left Afghanistan decades ago. Their frequencies were dead. This was impossible. I checked the channel. It was correct. Thinking the radio was broken, I turned it off and got a brand new one from our supply box. My hands were shaking. I powered on the new radio. The moment it came to life, the same static hissed, and the same desperate Russian voice came through, now joined by others. A chorus of overlapping pleas and screams, all swallowed by a final, piercing shriek of static. I turned the radio off and threw it into the corner. The silence that followed was profound and somehow more threatening than the noise. It was the silence of a predator that knows you are now aware of it. Then the footsteps started. On the wooden platform behind me, tip, tip, tip. It was a light, precise sound like bone clicking on wood. It was not the heavy scuff of a boot. I spun around, my rifle raised. Nothing. The platform was empty. The wind whistled. I turned back to my watch. A moment later, tip, 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 closer this time. I spun again. Nothing. Just the empty night. This happened again and again. I would feel a sudden cold puff of air on the back of my neck. It smelled of damp soil and old decay. I would spin around, my heart hammering. Nothing. It was playing with me. It was savoring my fear. It was feeding on the slow, careful unraveling of a rational mind. I spent the rest of my shift staring into the darkness, my knuckles white on my rifle, counting down the seconds until dawn. I have never felt so helpless. The next day, we were all on edge. We needed to do something normal, something a soldier does. We needed to feel in control. So we decided to improve our defensive position. We would deepen the trench that ringed the base of our rock. The ground was hard and unyielding. We dug with a frantic, desperate energy. The physical labor was a relief. For a little while, we could forget the terror of the night. Then, Davis's shovel hit something with a dull, wooden crunch. We all stopped. We carefully cleared away the dirt with our hands. It was a skull, but it was wrong. The jaw was unhinged, frozen in a silent, eternal scream, and the bone was not white. It was stained a deep, ugly black, as if it had been scorched from the inside out. We kept digging. We found another skull, and another. We uncovered a pit of skeletons, all tangled together in a final, desperate embrace. It was a mass grave, but it was not from one time. Among the bones, we found the tattered remains of Soviet-era uniforms from the 1980s. We found their canteens and their belt buckles, but we also found older things. Fragments of rusted British Enfield rifles from a century ago, and even older, crude iron daggers that looked ancient. This was not a grave from a single battle. This was a midden, a refuse pile. This was the place where this mountain had been dumping its victims for a very, very long time. The British sergeant's warning echoed in my mind. We were not just desecrating a tomb. We were disturbing a larder. We were digging through a pantry. The air grew thick and cold. The whispering wind seemed to coil around us, and for a moment, the many voices merged into a single, coherent sound of pure, undiluted rage. After that, the following nights were a descent into a personalized hell. for each man on watch. Private Miller was a young kid from Ohio. He still had pictures of his high school girlfriend taped inside his helmet. On his watch, he saw the figure. He said it was tall and gaunt, dressed in traditional local clothes, but its limbs were too long. Its movements were not human. They were a series of jerky, unnatural twitches. It walked calmly past the perimeter wire, then stopped. Its head turned. It did not turn its body. Its head rotated a full 180 degrees to look directly at him. Its face was a smooth, featureless oval of pale skin. It had no eyes, no nose, no mouth. Then it raised a single, long-fingered hand. It was not a gesture to Miller. It was a signal to something behind it, a clear command to stop. Terrified, Miller looked through his thermal scope. He did not see one figure. He saw a dozen others flanking it. But these were different. They did not register as heat. They were the opposite of heat. They were voids, patches of absolute impossible cold that seemed to drink the thermal energy from the air around them. They were black holes in his vision. Miller screamed. He screamed his girlfriend's name and emptied 2 full magazines from his rifle into the darkness. When we found him, he was curled up on the platform, sobbing. The climax came on a night when sleep was an impossible fantasy. The fear was a physical presence among us. All 6 of us were huddled together near the base of the rock, trying to share what little courage we had left. Then, the air began to change. It grew heavy, pressing down on our eardrums. The temperature dropped sharply. Then, the sound started. It began as the familiar, comforting thump, thump, thump of an approaching Chinook helicopter, the sound of a home, of resupply, of rescue. But the sound grew louder than any helicopter we had ever heard. It warped, it distorted, until it became the deafening, terrifying rotor slap of a Soviet Hind helicopter gunship, a sound none of us had ever heard in real life, only in old war movies. We looked up. The sky was empty, a vast, clear tapestry of stars. Then the world dissolved into noise. It was a symphony of death from another era, the ripping cloth sound of AK-47s, the heavier, slower beat of a Soviet DSHK heavy machine gun, the crump of mortars exploding, the sharp whoosh of RPGs, and the screams. Men screaming in Russian, in Pashto, in raw, animal terror. It was a full-scale battle happening all around us, in perfect, horrifying detail. We were not just hearing it, we were in it. We could feel the concussive waves of the explosions hitting our chests. We could smell the acrid scent of cordite, and the coppery tang of blood on the air. Dust and debris were kicked up around us. We dove into the trench, convinced we were about to be shredded by shrapnel from a war that had ended decades before we were born. Rodriguez, next to me, suddenly clutched his leg and screamed in agony. There was no wound. I felt a searing heat on my face, the phantom wash of a nearby blast. The sounds reached a deafening, overwhelming crescendo, a final massive explosion that felt like it would split the mountain in half. And then, nothing. The silence was a physical blow. It was more than an absence of sound. It was a vacuum. Our ears rang in the void. We were covered in dust, but there was no evidence of the battle. No shell casings, no craters, no smoke, no blood, only us. 6 broken men sobbing and trembling in a hole in the ground. Rodriguez's leg was fine. My face was not burned. It had all been an illusion, a phantom battle, a ghostly echo replaying itself for us, the latest victims. That was our breaking point. Miller cracked completely. He curled into a fetal position and started whispering nursery rhymes. He was gone. The next morning, we called for an emergency evacuation. We did not sight enemy contact, We cited a non-terrestrial, sentient threat. We said the location was psychologically untenable. The command thought we had mass hysteria, but they had no choice. They pulled us out. We thought we had escaped. We were wrong. The mountain did not let go. It had tasted us. It had marked us. The horror followed us home. Charlie was the first to go. 2 weeks after returning to the United States, he was driving home on a clear, straight road in the middle of the day. His car suddenly veered off the road for no reason and wrapped itself around a tree. He was killed instantly. The police report said driver error. The coroner said he had a massive heart attack at the wheel. Rodriguez was killed in a live fire training exercise back at Fort Bragg. The official report called it a friendly fire incident, a grenade malfunction. The details were murky and quickly sealed. Davis, the one who had uncovered the first blackened skull, was riding his motorcycle. He drove straight off a bridge into a shallow creek. He drowned in 2 feet of water. The report said he made no attempt to save himself. It was as if he just gave up. Chris, the soldier who had the final, most terrifying watch with the black voids, simply walked out of his forward operating base one night. He left all his gear behind. He just vanished into the Afghan night. He was listed as missing, duty status, whereabouts unknown. Despite extensive searches, no trace of him was ever found. Of the 6 of us who served on that godforsaken rock, I am the only one left. The last man standing. I know it is not over. I feel it every day. The curse, or the entity, or whatever intelligent thing lives on that mountain is saving me for last. It is drawing out my suffering. It is in my house now. I am not crazy. I see the shadows in my hallway congeal and move when I turn my head. I hear the tip, tip, tip of footsteps on my hardwood floors. At 3 in the morning, I wake up to the smell of damp soil and decay. I kept my old army radio as a souvenir. Sometimes, in the dead of night, it will crackle to life from its place on the shelf. No one is there. The power is off. But through the static, a single, whispered word in Russian will slither out. Skoro. It means soon. This is not post-traumatic stress disorder. This is not in my head. This is a haunting. We did not just witness a ghost. We trespassed on the territory of something intelligent, something malevolent, something ancient that views us as temporary visitors on its land. We angered it. We disturbed its rest, and it is not finished with us. It followed me home across an ocean. It is in my life. It is in my house. And I know, with a certainty that freezes my soul, that it is only a matter of time before it decides to finish what it started on that mountain. It is only a matter of time before it comes for me. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Undeniable Fear for more real encounters and terrifying tales. And if you have your own experience to share, send it to us. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and remember, fear is undeniable.